So,
because I've a
gang,
little.
can you please give Paul another warm welcome from the Integrate community? Thank you for being here. We deeply appreciate and love you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be back. How many of you have been? I recognize some faces, like Curtis, I recognize, and Rhonda, I believe I recognize, and maybe Sarah. And I'm looking at names, and there. But how many of you have been here for one of the talks that I've given before, one of the Integrate communities, or almost all of you? Fantastic. All right, so we'll look at this more as a deepening than. Than an introduction. And the path that I've been on, gosh, I mean, for the last year now, but in a more intense way for the last 6 months, has been this overlap of microdosing and nervous system regulation. And honestly, this came about largely from conversations that Jay and I had together. So I'll give you a little bit of the backstory so you have some context about what led to this. And then as many of you know, like, I love to keep it pretty open ended. So I have some questions and there will be some things that we get into. But Jay and I were at a mastermind, I believe in March of last year. So this is about 10 months ago. And it was in San Diego here with a number of other entrepreneurial friends in San Diego, some of whom I knew quite well, some of whom I was meeting for the first time. Jay and I go back, so it was really great to spend some time in that environment with him. It was the sort of, some of you may be familiar with Jay's blast off mastermind, right? Protocol and structure. So we used 3MMC. We did 20-minute blocks. And when it was my time to go up on the stage, Jay dropped a couple wisdom bombs, one of which was around the sort of notion of a psychedelic vanguard, which is something that I picked up on more and more, which is a fun little play on words. But the second thing was to really start to own more of my own, I guess, expertise in this space, you know? And so from that conversation in March and some ongoing coaching work that Jay and I did and have done together, I sort of took a lot of my past and prior experience with microdosing, physiology, and then sort of the knowledge of these various compounds, LSD, psilocybin, and wachuma, and decided I'd sort of stake my stake my flag in this overlap of nervous system work and San Pedro, which you'll hear me refer to as wachuma, because that's the way that the Quero people, right, the indigenous people of Peru, have referred to San Pedro for thousands of years. The kind of funny side tangent. Do any of you know how San Pedro got its name originally as a cactus? Any of you? You can
No
take
idea.
yourself off mute and chime in. So San Pedro means what in Spanish?
Penis, I imagine.
No.
Same here.
Right, St. Peter,
Yeah,
right? And
St.
so
Peter.
St. Peter is come on, Jay. St. Peter is, after Jesus, probably
Well, if you see
probably the
if you
most.
see how it looks, it seems to make sense to me.
It's a phallic symbol, yes, but gotta go a little bit deeper than that. So St. Peter, after Jesus, St. Peter and arguably Paul, Paul the Apostle, St. Peter is the most important figure in Christian history. And so when the Spanish started to colonize Peru in particular, the indigenous peoples needed to hide this cactus that they had been using, for up to 10,000 years. There's really strong archaeological evidence that goes back about 3,000 years, but some say it goes back even farther than that. So they needed to hide it. So what better way to hide it than to name it after this sort of symbol of Christianity, right? Because then it'll keep in the good graces of the missionaries that had come down. And so they called it San Pedro, and that's the name that stuck. But really, the essence of it is wachuma. And what's beautiful about San Pedro, as I've mentioned before, is, when we're looking at ayahuasca, when we're looking even at psilocybin mushrooms, the evidence, the archaeological evidence for the ancient historical use of both ayahuasca and psilocybin mushrooms isn't great. And that's partly because of the environment in which they were used. So ayahuasca used in the jungle, right? That's going to be really hot and sticky and moist. There's not much that sticks around. But because wachuma was used in the high Andes, where it's very dry, there's a lot of archaeological evidence that sticks around. So we have incredible evidence of its historical use. And there's a really good book, and this won't be the first book you've heard me recommend. It probably won't be the last book. It's called Mescaline, A Global History of the First Psychedelic. I'm a history nerd, right? And a lot of what we've talked about with third wave is to go forward, we need to go back, right? That a lot of the tools and techniques that are actually most effective for us to be utilizing are not cutting edge things. They're practices that have been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And so in this book, Mescaline, A Global History of the First Psychedelic, Mike J writes all about the use of San Pedro by basically the ancient royalty in Peru as a ceremony to help them align with greater power, God, whatever that might be. So, right, a very shamanic use. Now, why am I communicating all of this? What's the relevance to what we're going to be getting into today? So I would say one of the greatest ailments, I mean, there's a lot of ailments that we're dealing with in sort of in our industrial time. There you go. Is that from The Sorcerer, Jerry? Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you know, you know, right? That's The Sorcerer is this great underground kind of thing in the States that ships amazing products. Um, So, mental health crisis, yes, right? We have a mental health crisis. We've talked about depression and addiction and PTSD. We know that psychedelics are really great for this. What a lot of folks don't realize is the pretty distinct and clear relationship between our metabolic health and our mental health, and the way that the nervous system connects and ties that together. There's another really great book called Brain Energy by Chris Palmer, who's an assistant professor of psychiatry at Harvard, where he talks about how every mental health disorder is a metabolic dysfunction. So when we're looking at microdosing in particular, when we're looking at its utility and usefulness, we're not just looking at it within a vacuum necessarily. We're interested in the synergy of microdosing with various practices. So Jay has talked about this before in terms of microdosing with hypnotherapy, or microdosing with relational work, or microdosing with, Jay loves to microdose and work out, so microdosing at the gym so you get a little bit more pump or endurance or whatever it is, or go for runs, right? I know this is something that Jay has talked a lot about as well. So my particular interest is in, and I'm going to make this through line very clear and clean, the anti-inflammatory properties of microdosing, which you probably heard me talk about before, the relation between chronic inflammation and metabolic dysfunction, and the relationship between metabolic dysfunction and overall health and well-being, right? Because when we can get the chronic inflammation down, when we can help the body's natural systems to come on and be in greater harmony, then we have more energy, we have more vivacity, we have more capacity to do what it is that we want to do. The challenge is that our nervous systems are often stuck in fight or flight. And so as I've gone through my own path and journey of entrepreneur and high performance and overworking and stress, I've started to better understand my own relationship to my nervous system. So oftentimes we teach the very process that we are exploring ourselves, right? And so in fact, again, on a slight tangent, tomorrow, if you want a deeper dive about the nervous system, I'm going to do a 60-minute webinar, free to attend. You can just register using this link. If you can't make it live, you'll get the recording. But I'm going to go really deep into the biology of burnout in particular. So what is burnout? How does it manifest? What does it look like? How do we recover from it? So I'm going to do a 60-minute deep dive on burnout and talk a little bit about how microdosing San Pedro in particular can support with burnout. So to come back, microdosing San Pedro, its impact on inflammation and nervous system regulation. Out of, Jay mentioned these other two protocols, right? The Fadiman protocol, which is 1 day on, 2 days off, and the Stamets protocol, which is 4 days on, 3 days off. Both of those protocols are just about, let's say, the drug itself, right? So Fadiman was like LSD, was really his focus with this protocol. So he's like, just take the LSD. There's really no other perspective or advice. Take the LSD on one day, take a couple days off, take it again. On the second day, see how you feel. Stamets was focused on psilocybin, lion's mane, and niacin, right? The Stamets stack. His advice was take the medicine 4 days on, take 3 days off, rinse and repeat. What we're learning, especially as more clinical research comes out around microdosing, is that if we try to stuff psychedelics into the same sort of medical model that SSRIs and benzodiazepines and mood stabilizers have been in for so long, we're not going to see the efficacy that we hope for, right? And I think all of us are aware that the work that we do with psychedelics is not so much the drug, although that is helpful. It's a catalyst for neuroplasticity. It's about the choices that we make with that open window of neuroplasticity to fundamentally change our behaviors. And so if we look at this overlap between microdosing, let's say inflammation or physiological well-being, and nervous system regulation, we're at the core of it, we're looking at energy. Right? And how do we have more energy? How do we have a greater capacity to hold energy and then focus that energy towards outcomes, towards shifts and changes, towards a better overall well-being? Just to reiterate, Wachuma then, the reason I've chosen Wachuma and we've really focused on Wachuma is because it has a 12-hour window like LSD. So I think my very humble opinion, you could take this for what it is. I know many of you love your mushrooms and psilocybin, so this is no shade on mushrooms. But I really look at psilocybin as sort of the beginner entry into microdosing. And I think there's a couple reasons why it's less effective than LSD and Wachuma. The core one being that it just doesn't last as long. And so a lot of people who are coming into microdosing are really looking for something that's going to help elevate their mood and their energy for the full day. Psilocybin's about 6 hours in length, whereas LSD is about 12 hours in length. And same with Wachuma. Wachuma is 12 hours in length. So one of the reasons I love Wachuma is because it has that 12-hour length, right? So it's a little more stimulating. It's a little more activating. But unlike LSD, it's not as stimulating and activating, so you can still feel the groundedness, which is why Golden Rule, with their product, which is right here, I have some in my cabinet, it's called Rooted. What's beautiful about Wachuma is as a cactus, it has this really vivacious vitality, right? This sun energy that comes with it. So it's uplifting. It's more dopaminergic, so there's more dopamine with it, but it's not overly stimulating like LSD. Now, if we look at then that overlap, and I'm going to get into the actual protocol now. If we look at that overlap between Wachuma and our nervous system practices, many of us spend a lot of our time in a sympathetic state. Jerry, that's a good question. I'll get to it. So, Jerry, I love also the questions. If you all have any other questions that are coming up as I'm getting into this, just drop it in here. I'm going to quickly review my protocol, open up for some questions, and then get back into material. And Jerry, I'll use your question as an opportunity in a little bit to talk about the difference between alkaloids and plant medicines, because there is an important distinction there between the two. So then when we're looking at the nervous system as a whole, and this is what I'll go into more detail around tomorrow in the webinar, we're really looking at how do we support the nervous system, and first of all, getting up and out of tiredness, right? Having more energy, having more capacity, and then being able to spend more time in this parasympathetic state, this sort of rest and digest state. And oftentimes, the thing that we are most stuck in is fight, flight, or freeze. So it's a particular dorsal vagal response, which makes it difficult for a lot of people in, urban, sort of modern industrial environments to focus. It makes it difficult for us to have the energy that we need to do what we need to do. It makes it difficult for us to sleep oftentimes. So we're really looking at what can we do to have a particular protocol that gets us to shift out of this dysregulated state? Now, my question for all of you, and you could just write in the chat on this, what do you think is the greatest indicator? And this could be a biomarker, this could be a subjective sense or a subjective state, it could be an observation or a reflection, but what do you think is a really strong or important indicator of a dysregulated nervous system? You can write in the chat. What is a pretty clear indicator of a dysregulated nervous system? Chronic fatigue, lack of patience, lack of focus, insomnia, an inability to breathe deeply, right? Scattered, irritable, disrupted sleep. Okay, good. Sarah, that's what I was going to go for, because that is the quickest and easiest sort of thing. It's HRV, right? Heart rate variability. How many of you know what your heart rate variability is? Okay.
I just want to
it.
jump in, Paul, for a brief moment, and just say, you've never heard me recommend an Aura Ring or a Whoop or any of those sorts of things ever before. This is coming at you totally sideways, like you've never even, like, fuck, it's brand new. Get one.
Are you being facetious?
Tell your HRV. Okay, I'll be quiet now, I promise.
He is, because he talks about it a lot. But I'm in the boat where I know there's an HRV, but I don't know really what it means, or if it's good or bad, or if I don't understand how to read it, how to analyze it for myself.
All right. So Jay told me that, hey, Paul, you got to come with 3 to-dos. We're doing this new structure, so come in with 3 to-dos. So the number 1 to-do coming out of this is know your HRV. Some of you, that's already the case. So for those of you who know your HRV, I would say no. The second thing would be you know your resting heart rate, right? So the 2 greatest indicators of physiological and nervous system health are HRV and RHR. So if you know your HRV, drop it in the chat. I want to kind of get a sense of what HRVs are at. 42. 29. I know some of you are probably looking on your apps and like, okay, what was it? 26, 25. 48. Okay. Wow, Jay, resting heart rate 48. That's pretty good.
I'm assuming you need a
Resting heart
device.
rate 55. Right? It's helpful, yeah, like usually a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, an Oura Ring, a Whoop, right? There is a very specific HRV device, which I have. It's like an HRV monitor. That's the most accurate HRV, but the Aura Whoop does a decent job. All right, so we're seeing, and that's HRV, James. HRV is 55. Fantastic. All right, so James, if we were going on HRV alone, and Jay and I had planned this out a little bit more, we would have provided the rooted to the highest HRV in the room, but so HRV stands for heart rate variability. The higher, the better. Okay, the higher, the better. It's partly dependent on age, meaning the older that you get, the lower the HRV tends to be, but not necessarily. A strong HRV, let's say I'm 35, so a strong HRV would be anywhere usually between 70 and 80. If I'm honest, part of the reason I'm going so deep into this nervous system work and I've started to teach so much around it and really explore it is because my HRV at this point is about 40. And I don't know why. And I'm trying to figure it out at this point in time. So a good goal to set, like I'm starting right now my own sort of 6-week protocol for nervous system work, and I'm trying to double my HRV from 40 to 80. And the variability aspect, heart rate variability, it's something along the lines of like a little, like no variability means your heart is always pumping the same, right? Always pumping the same. You don't want that, right? Because that is a sign of less resilience. So we want there to be actually more variability, not to the point where it's an arrhythmia, that would be problematic, but more variability with how the heart is beating and the pulse of it. Because that variability is a good sign of vascular health, which is then often a good sign of nervous system health. And so number one, know your HRV. Number two, I would say for everyone here is a different age, but my bet would be for most of you, a good goal to set for HRV is 60. It's a good initial goal. Resting heart rate, the lower the better. So Brian Johnson, the sort of the very eccentric guy who's doing this whole don't die thing, right? I think his resting heart rate is something like 40, which is insane. I mean, Jay having a resting heart rate of 48 is quite good. I think my resting heart rate as of late has been 55 or so. So if you can get your resting heart rate down 45 to 55, that's also a good sign.
This just on that same note of resting heart rate. So I'm doing dry January again as part of some fitness goals and just a choice. But what I have been able to track, again, the power of the aura, is that by the end of a month without alcohol, my rate will be 42 to 44. Like in October, it was 42 to 44. When I did sober October, and then I started having wine again for Christmas and those sorts of things, and it pops back up to like 48 to 52 if I'm drinking wine. So that's just how powerful one small thing happens. By the end of the month, I'll be 42 to 44 again.
Right. Now, there are other ways as well to get your HRV. So if you don't want to drop like a few $100s on an Oura Ring or a Fitbit, there are cheaper devices. Like I said, there's an HR. I want to just find this so you have it. There's an HRV specific monitor. That's like $60, $50, something like that. That will help you to get it. Optimal HRV. That's what it is. $65. I'm gonna drop it in here. Even $35 for clearance. But that's a really important thing. You got to know your HRV, and you should ideally just know it offhand. It's a good metric to know offhand. Okay, so that's going to close the first part of this. Before I go into the second part, which is going to be going pretty deep into our protocol and explaining it. It's about a 6-week protocol. I'll talk you through it. Any questions of what has just been brought up so far? I know Jerry had a good question about synthetic versus whole plant. Any other questions that are coming in just as I've talked a little bit about Wachuma and the nervous system and HRV and these sorts of things? It does not. No, Martina, you need an app for it. For most of these, you need an app. But there may be certain devices that don't, but I don't know of them. But if you did a bit of research, you might be able to find out. Okay, so let's get to Jerry's question about synthetic versus whole plant. So this is true across the plant medicine spectrum, right? The psychoactive alkaloid, so mescaline in San Pedro, psilocybin in mushrooms, ibogaine in iboga, 5-MeO-DMT in bufo, right? The synthetic alkaloid, the psychoactive alkaloid, is always one of many alkaloids in the plant. So when you take out the synthetic, you are getting the psychoactive effect, but it tends to have a different subjective impact than if you do the whole plant. Some of that's good, some of that's bad. What they've shown with some early research, I can only speak about psilocybin because that's the only research that I've seen so far on this topic. They've shown that outcomes tend to be better with the whole plant compared to the synthetic alkaloid, let's say, psychoactive alkaloid. That's oftentimes because of evolution. The alkaloid has been developed within this ecosystem. When we try to isolate variables, that's what modern medicine has done a really good job of, which hasn't worked out in many cases, right? I think there is this reclamation right now with Chinese medicine and herbal medicine that's starting to happen that psychedelics are a part of, because the other alkaloids that exist in wachuma or in mushrooms or in bufo or in iboga offer sort of grounding and other physiological benefits for the organism. I mean, one very clear example of this is with ayahuasca. What a lot of people don't know is, although there is a lot of psychological benefit to ayahuasca, right? NN-DMT is the main alkaloid in ayahuasca. A lot of psychological benefit to that experience. A lot of the physiological benefit comes, in fact, from the vine and not the leaf. So the leaf with ayahuasca is the one that has DMT, right? That's a psychoactive. The vine is what has the MAOI, harmaline. And they've shown now with research that a lot of the physiological benefits, specifically on the gut, comes from the harmaline, comes from the MAOI, comes from the vine. So I think we have to keep that in mind, that a lot, and this is kind of what I'm driving at even with this protocol with wachuma and the nervous system, is we have been so preoccupied in this quasi, so-called psychedelic renaissance with the mind, with the neck up, with the brain, right? Am I tripping? Am I having a trip? What's the impact on depression? What's the impact on PTSD? And the deeper I've been studying this and getting into this, and the more we're learning about physiological health and the relationship between physiological health and mental health, is, as I mentioned before, every metabolic dysfunction is in fact a mental health disorder, or can lead to a mental health disorder. Or rather, every mental health disorder is at its core a metabolic dysfunction. And mitochondria health has a lot to do with that, right? And when we lower stress overall, when we lower chronic inflammation, when we get the nervous system back into a regulated state, mitochondrial health improves, we have more energy, and all of a sudden, a lot of the mental health challenges or issues that we or our clients have been navigating start to resolve on their own. So energy is becoming really the central key part. If you take one thing away from this, it would be the importance of looking at our organism as an energetic body. And the more that we can do to support energy within that system, the healthier we will become, the more vital we will become, the more capacity that we will have to live our lives.
And just on that note, Paul, we had Wendy Schoaf as a guest here, I'm going to say 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and she had this whole model around the energy of the cell and how significant that is for the environment for medicine to have effect. So if what Paul is saying doesn't really add up for you, go back and listen to Wendy's presentation, because she was freaking brilliant and puts a whole bunch of science and a couple of really powerful metaphors that support what Paul's talking about.
And there was how many of you have listened to Huberman before, Andrew Huberman? You've seen a podcast of his or a reel of his or anything like that. So there was a pretty recent interview that he did with someone who I'm buddies with on X, on Twitter. His name is Martin Picard, who's a researcher. And I haven't listened to the interview, but I do know that it's a really good deep dive. And he goes a lot into the psychobiological impact of mitochondrial health. So I'm just going to drop it in here because I think this conversation around how do we support mitochondrial health and what does that have an impact? What impact does that have on our energy? What impact does that have on our overall well-being is going to be probably the hottest conversation in mental health and longevity in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so that's a really great deep dive if you want to go even deeper into that. How many of you have you've tried Wachuma before? And that could be with microdosing or it could be a high dose. Okay, Charles, Sarah, Jerry, Jay, Tanya, of course, Tanya. You have, okay, so about half of you. How many of you have tried microdosing San Pedro? Like you've done a protocol, right, Tanya, Jay, Chels, Sarah, yeah, okay.
And
So
I
you've
got to
done a
be honest,
protocol, you've
I
gone through
didn't
that.
stick with the protocol. I tried it for maybe a week or 10 days, and it felt a little bit like a non-event. And I put it away, and then I think I gave it to Chelsea after that. So Chelsea got the balance of it.
This sounds like a Jay thing. So the key that I'll emphasize as a teaching point with especially with any protocol. And Jay, next time text me. You know, I'm happy to coach you through the calibration of it. But we want to find that sweet spot, and then we want to stick to that process for about 6 weeks. And then at the end of those 6 weeks, then sort of reflect and understand, did this have an impact? Did this not have an impact? The comparison that I often use when talking about it is like with meditation. You know, if you sit down on a cushion every day for a week, there's going to be a little bit of an impact, but it's not going to be nearly as significant as if you're sitting on the cushion every day for 6 weeks, right? And the shift and change that you're going to see at the end of that. So I think the sort of starting point here is with any new protocol, right? Like a new medicine, like Wachuma, stick to 6 weeks. And the protocol that we've developed, which I'm gonna go through right now. Jay, I just sent a request for screen sharing.
You should have it.
Okay, let me just pull this up on my end. Hold on. Quick second. I know I had it somewhere. I'm gonna share. This is not the most oops. This is not the most recent one, but it's the one that I could find in time for today. Okay. And Tanya, you might recognize this because we had it in the training program. I'm going to share this as well. Okay, but this gives a pretty deep dive. Designed as a 6-week journey combining microdosing, somatic experiencing, and nervous system regulation practices. So essentially what we've done as part of this protocol is we've decided to expand beyond the medicine-only approach. So this is why I emphasize with Fadiman, 1 day on, 2 days off, it's just about the substance. Even with Stamets, 4 days on, 3 days off, it's largely about the substance. There's no additional context they're providing as part of their protocol in terms of what are the active practices or what is the particular focus, right? You can make the case that Fadiman is saying it's for mental health and Stamets is saying that it's for neurobiological benefit, right? Neurological optimization, cognitive optimization, but it's not necessarily clear in terms of the directions they provide. So I'm saying with our protocol, it has more context within it. And it's really, I would say, meant for practitioners. So if Fadiman and Stamets is more meant for the everyday person who's just starting to get going with microdosing, right? And they want to experiment and they've never tried a psychedelic before, then great. This is really for someone who you've already done, you know, a protocol or two. Now you want to take a much more focused approach on how can you develop or cultivate a closer relationship, a more practiced relationship with your nervous system. So there's somatic practices, journaling prompts for integration, and then we have various other things as part of this. And this is the key: microdosing 3 times per week, ideally every other day. So a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. On microdosing days, doing a particular nervous system regulation practice for 30 minutes. And I want to go back to Jay's point that he just made about Wendy, who spoke at a recent Integrate, right? Where Wendy talked about cellular health is really critical. The reason I think it's really important to weave in specific practices on microdosing days outside of just, you know, the neuroplastic impacts, which we've already talked so much about. The reason I think it's important is because when we are microdosing, when we're getting this medicine into our body, our cells are becoming more open, more malleable. Mitochondria is starting to heal, right? And so we want to weave in a particular nervous system practice on those microdosing days when we're in that slightly altered state, right? Slightly altered, not intoxicated, right? Because we've talked how microdosing is sub-intoxicating, but that slightly altered state. And then with some journaling reflections. So you can see Fatima in his mood, gentle self-study, Stamets his brain, and biohacking. With us, we're doing nervous system regulation. Now, this is the 6-week protocol, and Tanya has gone through this. I mean, Tanya, I believe you went through the whole thing. Tanya was right. I'm correct, Tanya, in stating that you were in the beta cohort, right, for MPC.
Yes, I did a protocol in January, and then I just did the recent one this fall with you.
And how was that? What'd you notice?
Oh.
What'd you observe? What?
Yeah, no, it was actually my favorite. I've done a protocol 6 week with psilocin. I've done LSD with you, Paul, and then this last one was San Pedro, and it honestly was the best medicine that I've worked with. It is much more subtle, and but I describe it as psilocin is the more emotional, LSD is more activating, and San Pedro is a combination of both, right in the middle.
And something just came up with that as well, Tanya, and I'm hitting on Jay's note, which Jay was like, I didn't really notice much, right, feel much, so I stopped it. And Tanya's note about the subtleties of it. I mentioned before how for many of us, and this is not a dig at Jay necessarily, but for many of us, we have nervous systems that are very stimulated, right? There is a go, go, go sort of attitude, especially with those of us who are entrepreneurs. And sometimes that means it can be a little more challenging or difficult to notice or attune to the subtleties of what's happening physiologically. And so what I've noticed is there's a pretty distinct relationship between the capacity to really notice and attune and feel in a way we're like thawing the nervous system. So when the medicine starts to come in, we can actually start to work with it and direct it in a way. And so I think this is an important aspect, that because it doesn't necessarily hit quite as hard unless you up the dose, right? And so this is the important part about calibration, is sometimes we need to get the energy shifted, because a lot of people with our nervous systems, we're sort of stuck in this freeze. And we need to unthaw the nervous system first to get it to open up. And then we can start to feel more. And then from that feeling comes a capacity to notice, attune, and work with it. And so that's the overall sort of structure of even what we're doing with our overall protocol, right? We're looking at how do we first develop self-awareness. So humming, breath work, full body scan, right? We have different things that we go through as part of these practices. How can we start to build physical and emotional safety by grounding? 5-count breath work, seated body scan, barefoot grounding rock, right? So there's a bit of a trajectory that we're going through week by week. So we go from grounding to activation. This is where cold exposure comes in, cold plunging, shake and stop, breath retention. Then we start to go into expression. How do we identify, move, and release emotions that are stored in the body? Somatic vocalization, primal movement, freeform dancing, emotional release practices. Week 5 is resilience. So we just take kind of a week to be a little softer, where we can integrate these new patterns, synthesize insights, and stabilize new habits. And then we go into week 6, expansion, right? Looking at, okay, now how do we root in this more regulated system for what we want to create going forward? And it's as simple as that. And the hardest part I've found is showing up, right? And many of us know that is often the key to this work. It's showing up. And so what we find is folks who show up, they microdose 3 days a week for 6 weeks. They commit to doing the practices on a consistent and regular basis. They commit to the journaling prompts, that every time something shifts. Now, it might not always be comfortable. It might not always be bliss and butterflies, as we like to say in the in the psychedelic space, but there's material with it, and that partly has to do with dialing in the calibration, partly has to do with the exercises, and it partly has to do with the community aspect to it. And I think this is also an important aspect, and this is why I love this community in particular, because I kind of remembered again when I came on today that most of you are couples, right? And so to be able to do this work in that relational dynamic, or as Tanya did with our last training program, right, do that in a community of other practitioners, right? Because for our microdosing practitioner certification, which Jay helped me to build, basically, I mean, I'm going to be very clear. We didn't have an idea, and then we had an idea, and Jay helped to build it and launch it, and then was a huge faculty as part of it. But in that microdosing practitioner certification program, we do this protocol, right? 6 weeks of microdosing with Chuma with nervous system work. We do 6 weeks of the basics and foundations of how to coach, right? Somatic coaching as part of the nervous system regulation works. And then Jay's our lead faculty for 6 weeks on how to launch an offer for microdosing to clients, basically. Looking at the integration of, it could be Wachuma, or we have some folks who go through it and be like, not everyone is, I wish everyone was as enthusiastic as Tanya. Not everyone is as big on Wachuma as Tanya is. Some people do prefer LSD at the end of the day, or they do prefer psilocybin at the end of the day. But I think the important crux here is this synthesis between microdosing and nervous system regulation.
Well, and I want to just add to that. It's it reminds me a lot of a personal journey and a custom medicine stack. Like I was in a conversation with a person who was asking, the questions are all about the medicines. Like we're not going to talk about the medicine. We're going to talk about what you want, what your intention is, and then we're going to deduce what the medicine that's going to serve and support you the most is. And I think that's the piece. And I even put this in the chat, is that my most positive anchor to microdosing is accessing flow states, and not just physically, but it's very loud at the gym for me. But it's also loud writing. It's also loud focusing and getting shit done. It's also loud cleaning my house, to be frank. Like I can just focus. And I think it just goes back to, if the intention is to drive towards nervous system regulation, that whole expectation and anchor and attachment that I have to the L experience just needs to be set aside. This is not that. This is a different thing. It is a different purpose. It is a different process. And my aim would be, could I get my HRV from 42 to 65, like that? And for that purpose, I'll sit with it, and I'll probably bug you about my dosing and those sorts of things as well. But I think it's just so important to clarify what the intention of a protocol is. And if it is inflammation reduction, if it's nervous system management, if it's accessing flow states and creativity, those are all different things. Anyway, it strikes me very clearly that my expectations and hopes for it weren't aligned to its gift.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. And so, what's the saying? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Maybe that's why you brought me in, Jay, to teach about. Just kidding.
No. So, by the way, this is a big conversation that Corey and I are having heading into 2026. Is this idea of resetting and recalibrating our mutual nervous systems, and how we both support and regulate one another, and how we trigger and set one another off. So this is perfectly in alignment with our 2026 adventures.
I'm also, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I'm doing that with my partner as well. And when we're looking at it, we're like, wow, we have very similar HRVs. We have very similar resting heart rates. I don't know if any other couples have noticed this as well, but it seems like there is because we're so intimately intertwined, like our bodies are in the same energetic field in a way, right? And so if we're going to do nervous system work, we almost have to do it together. It can't just be like, yeah, you go do your nervous system work, I'm good. Because of the way the nervous system works, it works in relationship. So it's also why I love it as a thing for couples, because it's like, if just one person is doing it and committing to it, but the other person isn't doing it, it's you're kind of you're like an obstacle. It's sort of like trying to do something, but you gotta, what do they call it? A ball and chain that's stuck to your ankle and you can't go anywhere. So it feels important. And I'm just riffing here, Jay, but this is what I've noticed, more and
We
more.
could maybe back up and redo that metaphor, but
Goes both ways, okay? It goes both ways. Like an anchor, okay? So it's like we need to be freed up. We need to be in that, and it's. I mean, this is true with a lot of stuff, I would say, but I think it's true especially with the nervous system, and I feel like the nervous system is just starting to be talked about, right? Many of us have heard a podcast around it. We've, probably looked, like many of us have looked into HRV, but I think it's going to be insanely important in the next, 5, 7, 10 years, especially as we become more aware of just how stressed we are and what impact that is having on our hearts and our bodies and all these sorts of things. So I'm going to pause there because I just, I tend to come in hot with a lot of content and a lot of context and a lot of enthusiasm. So I'd love to open it up a little bit for conversation, dialogue, questions, perspectives, see what you all want to learn more about or even have to share about. What have you noticed about microdosing and nervous system work? What have you noticed about your own nervous system and how regulated it is or how not regulated it is? Any other questions as well? And I can get into some of these that come in. So Sarah asked, it's a great opening question. Curious how you find your sweet spot with San Pedro. So I would think of it in terms of a similar way with LSD and psilocybin. So LSD, it's like start with 5 micrograms, go to 10 micrograms, right? Some people go up to 15 micrograms, maybe 20 micrograms, depending on tolerance and sensitivity and all these sorts of things. Most people find their sweet spot at about 10 micrograms, right? Same with psilocybin, 50 milligrams with psilocybin, 100 milligrams, 150, 200. Most people find their sweet spot at about 100 milligrams of psilocybin. Now, this is strain dependent, of course, with psilocybin, right? Ghost is going to be different than golden teachers because the potency of psilocybin is much different. But if we're talking sort of a moderate strain of psilocybin, about 100 milligrams is the standard dose. San Pedro is a gram, which is why it tends to be more expensive and also why it tends to be harder to get. Because I don't know how many of you have seen a San Pedro cactus and tried to shave it down and get it all off, but it takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. And so a gram of San Pedro is usually a typical microdose. Some folks will go up to 1.5 grams of San Pedro as a microdose. Some might even go up to 2 grams, but most find their sweet spot at about a gram
So I'm
every
curious
other day.
what that feels like, Paul. I mean, I know how to do LSD and psilocybin, the feeling that you get, but where Wachuma is supposed to be less sort of somatic feeling, what is it that you're looking for? I mean, I've been doing a gram now and I'm kind of like Jay. Not really, it feels like a nothing burger here, but
Have
trusting
you tried a
trusting the
gram and a half?
process. And I have not yet. So that's why I was curious is what am I looking for as I'm titrating up?
Yeah, do that. Like I would say this applies to anything. You're looking to be intoxicated, if that makes sense, right? So you're looking to feel it, you're looking to notice it, and you're looking to get to a point where you're like, I did a little too much. This is my usual advice because then you've hit a threshold, right? You're like, okay, like I see what this is. Now I can step back a little bit. And what's great about San Pedro is, yeah, sure, these come in capsules, but I mean, I can break up the capsule and I can do a 1/4 gram instead of a 1/2 gram, right? These are 1/2 gram capsules. So if you do 1.5 and you're like, okay, that's a little too much, go down to 1.25. Or if you do 1.5 and you're like, I'm feeling it a little bit, but I wonder what 2 grams could look like, go up to 2 grams and see what that could look like. And then also, how much coffee are you drinking, Sarah? If
I
any?
have one sugar-free Red Bull a day. That's it. A
Oh,
small
okay.
one. So I'm
All
not
right.
a big caffeinated
Not a big
person.
caffeine. Okay. All right. Good to know. Because sometimes that'll also be the case. My sense of Jay and his coffee intake is that could have been a factor in some of the sensitivity, right? This is why, like with dietas with ayahuasca as an example, it's like you don't drink any caffeine for a week or two before the experience because caffeine tends to be contraindicated for sensitivity for plant medicine because it's reiterating or reifying a lot of the mental stuff, which can often act as a block to the opening.
Quick question.
True.
Decaf tastes just as good. Decaf is just called brown sadness water. That is not like that's the biggest crock of bullshit in the entire universe. No brown sadness water in my house. It's not allowed. I have a question before I got judgy. So the actual molecule of San Pedro looks an awful lot like a molecule of MDMA. Like they're very, very similar. And I've never done a macro dose of Wachuma or San Pedro. What is the feeling similar to that in any way, shape, or form? Like when you're saying like, I'm looking to get intoxicated, like am I looking for that sort of warmth in my heart? Like could you describe what that is on a larger dose?
Sure. Sure.
So it's not.
Yeah. So mescaline, which is the alkaloid, right, in Wachuma and peyote, is a phenethylamine, just like MDMA, which is what Jay is pointing to. And so MDMA, which I think we've all done at this point, MDMA, you really, it's like, whew, you really drop into the heart, very present, very open, very soft, maybe a little too soft, a little Gumby-like is sometimes how I feel in MDMA. Like it's really noticeable, right? The oxytocin is really pumping. Wachuma is a little bit dialed back from that. So Wachuma feels more like very lucid, very present, very much in the heart. Things tend to slow down a lot more. And just like happy. Like it's a really nice mood booster. Right. So when you start to notice it, there should be a noticing of a little bit of a slowing down, a little bit more of an awareness of the heart, an elevation in mood, and more energy. It's also going to help with just more energy because it's stimulating as well. So that's the thing to notice. Like, do you just speak a little bit slower? Do you hold eye contact for a little bit longer? Can you stay focused on a task for a little bit longer? These are the sort of things to notice and pay attention to. Whereas I find with LSD tends to put me into that flow state, but it feels a little more manic. Like I'm like hopping from idea. Like it's great for brainstorming because I'm like one idea to the next idea to the next idea, and I'm like, I feel up, I feel stimulated, I feel Wachuma is going to feel a little more calm when compared to LSD.
Yeah, and I'll add that my experience with San Pedro microdosing, my results are, I felt way more grounded. My patience was extremely high. I didn't get triggered. And if I did get triggered, I moved past it way faster than I ever would have before as well. Sleep improved, patience. Yeah, I said that. Yeah, those are the main ones, but it is subtle. And honestly, at my dosing at 750 is where I sat for the 6 weeks. I honestly didn't feel anything. And so yet I still knew at the end of 6 weeks, I saw significant change.
And were you measuring physiologically as well in terms of HRV and those sorts of things to give a more objective view than the subjective, or?
No, I did more subjective.
No. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we also did the kind of a higher dose together, like almost a connection experience
on San Pedro.
Yeah, and it was more like more being present with each other rather than MDMA type thing.
Cool.
Yeah, like San Pedro, you feel like even at high doses, like I've done a tea that would be equivalent to 20, 25 grams of Wachuma. I mean, I wouldn't say this publicly, but I could drive a car
Mhm.
on it if I really wanted to. If I had to snap in, right, and focus, I could do that. Granted, I drive a Tesla, so it would help substantially.
Well, Tesla
But
drives
like
you.
exactly, but so there is that level of lucidity with Wachuma that at high doses of mushrooms you're not lucid. At high doses of LSD you're not lucid. At even higher doses of MDMA you're not going to be getting in a car and driving anywhere. Where even at fairly high doses of Wachuma, like it's pretty easy just to kind of come into center. In fact, a lot of the times the way it's been used is for vision quests in the Andes. So people will drink a lot of Wachuma and they'll hike for miles, right? So
Miss
I
Denise
think
has
what
a
a lot of
question.
oh yeah, yep.
Hi.
I have a fun
It
story.
almost sounds like the Vitruma is similar, what I hear you saying, because I haven't tried it, like 3-MMC only with more energy.
Yeah, I mean so 3-MMC is a cathinone. And what that means is cathinones come from khat, Khat. Khat is a leaf that they chew in Yemen and Oman and other places like that. It tends to be a like it opens up, kind of vasodilator. It helps people like khat will be what workmen chew when they're just on a construction site and they're hanging out. It'll be a cathinone. It's stimulating. It's heart opening. It doesn't last too long. And there's no kind of MDMA hangover the next day, right? So I would say the main difference between Wachuma and the cathinones, which is what 3-MMC is that it lasts for much longer. It's not a synthetic, so 3-MMC is a synthetic, so it tends to feel a little bit more synthetic, I guess. Wachuma tends to have a little bit more of a grounded, anchored kind of presence, slowing down presence to it. And I would say it's a little bit like sometimes with 3-MMC, I still get the jaw stuff. You don't feel that at all on Wachuma. It's very calming in a way, whereas even with 3-MMC, sometimes I feel like this is a little stimulating, you know?
So when you're talking about your HRV, is that when
Mhm.
you figure out all that, is that how you're able to look at how your nervous system is doing?
So that it's a great external indicator for the health of your nervous system. And so, sorry, I don't know if I tied that all together. The higher the HRV, the better, and the higher the HRV means the more regulated your nervous system is.
Okay.
And the more regulated your nervous system is, the more resilient you tend to be, the more capacity and energy that you have, the easier it is to focus, the easier it is to sleep, things like this. So HRV is a great indicator of where you're at, which is why I said number one thing was go figure out your HRV.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So fun, Rhonda, do you have a question? Yeah.
So curious if San Pedro is an accelerator like LSD, like for body pain. I find doing psilocybin, it's okay on my body. LSD, I like mentally energy, but I do find it accelerates some of my body pains.
But you mean like it makes it worse, the
Yes.
body pains.
Yeah.
So have you done blood work or anything to kind of get a sense of your CRP levels or inflammation levels? Or no? Okay. Because
I find it really hard with doctors to kind of look into things a little deeper. They just say nothing, I can't find anything, or do this, I can't find anything. So
okay. All right. Um, I want to say something that will be helpful. So chronic pain has two components. one component is, from the initial pain itself. The other component is the psychosomatic, right? And how do we sort of heal the nervous system and help the nervous system come back into a regulated place so we can sort of reorient our relationship to that pain. I mean, you've probably looked into this, but like they've shown with, for example, higher doses of psychedelics like psilocybin and ayahuasca, that they've seen a lot of chronic pain remission from that high dose work. This is going to be different for everyone, but my sense is, or my bet is, the Wachuma will be supportive, if not just neutral, for the pain, because it is highly anti-inflammatory. And when we can start to get those inflammation systems down more and more, there's more energy that comes into the system to allow to navigate through that pain. So I would say it's worth experimenting. Right, it's a whole different drug class when compared to LSD. So LSD is a lysergamide, Wachuma is the phenethylamine. So it's a very different type of drug, even though they're all psychedelics. And I know even in our recent beta cohort, the microdosing practitioner certification that Tanya was part of, we had a few people who noticed that Wachuma was helpful for pain within that as well. So I think it's worth exploring. And then there's also, I'm just going to drop this in for you, Rhonda, because there's a friend of mine who has like a Substack all about pain, the nervous system, and she's a neuroscientist of some sort. I'm gonna find her quick. She has a newsletter that she writes about because she was in pain for a long time and did a lot of different nervous system stuff. So if you want to like get on her newsletter, she sends out some good stuff about this relationship between neuroplasticity, applied behavioral change, the nervous system, and pain, basically.
Okay.
And it's
Thank you.
there's some good takes in there. So I dropped the link in.
And I just want to echo, and I'm sharing, by the way, I'm sharing that link with another community member whose sister, we've been in a very similar conversation about what we just had with Rhonda, and I'm sharing that link as well. But Rhonda, just on a little sidebar to this, in terms of just finding someone who's willing to explore. I don't know if you attended when Jordana Quinn, Dr. Jordana Quinn, was in Integrate. So she has an entire practice that is dedicated. So she's both a traditional Western doctor and a doctor of Chinese medicine and a guide, and has a lab and a whole variety of things that really explore unusual things. And she has both the patience and the perspective to actually really work with someone. So anyway, we're fortunate enough, Jerry and James, you will meet her in Denver at Blastoff. She's just a brilliant human being. I'm amazed by her. But anyway, just as somebody who can lean in an unusual way, I think the world of her.
Are you able to send me? Oh, I guess it'd be on one of the previous.
Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 weeks ago, but I can also just send you a personal introduction. Like she'd be, you can just talk to her and see what's what.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. So I was gonna ask Tanya, because part of the reason I'm also teaching about this or bringing this in is we are starting another cohort for our next microdosing practitioner certification program, and that starts in 2 weeks. It starts November 20th. It's a 4-month training, and Tanya, you went through it with us, so I'm just wondering if you'd be open with sharing just a little bit about what your experience like was in that. Why is it that you signed up for that? How has it been helpful in terms of your work as a practitioner? I would kind of love to hear your take while we're here.
Yeah, thanks. As I mentioned before, I had microdosed with Paul in his protocol with LSD, and then I'm actually not a practitioner, and I did it for personal reasons and exploring. So I wanted to try the San Pedro is what I used, and I love the community support portion of it. I was very intrigued by the nervous system work and the homework, which really then did deepen the whole microdosing experience for me because I had done psilocin before. And the LSD, you did a similar protocol. So you did journaling work with that and such. And so just having that support along with the community sharing, going on calls like this, definitely helps, keeps you motivated, keeps you activated in the work, keeps you showing up. For me, it did anyways. And the psilocin, I'm not sure what else that I haven't said before already. But I'm open to questions if people want to reach out to me too, for conversations of other components, but it was very beneficial.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I was happy to see you on here. I instantly recognized you, and we had a great beta cohort. We had about 40 people sign up. I think when I was working on it with Jay, we were like hoping for 25, and we ended up having quite a few people. So I'm gonna drop the link in here. We've added quite a few new faculty. Gay Hendricks, who's a New York Times bestselling author of The Big Leap, has been on Oprah several times. He stepped in. Pedram Shojai. Pedram is he's called the Urban Monk. Wrote a book around that, so he's going to come in and teach some things around his various nervous system practices. Rosalind Watts. Rosalind is a clinical psychologist from Imperial College of London who was involved in a lot of the early psilocybin trials. We have Indigenous elder Jamie, who's become a good friend. Jamie is an Indian wisdom keeper, and then a bunch of other folks. I just wanted to kind of raise some awareness around that. The publicly available price point is $5K. I mean, what I'm happy to do for any members in this community, if you want to join, is drop $1,000 off of that. So it would be $4K if you wanted to join, or if both of you wanted to join as a couple, we could do it for $6K in total. So it'd be $3K each. I'm happy to just do a kind of killer deal that way. Jay has been a huge help, and you all have been really great along this way. And you could talk. We have Joseph's our career advisor. So just take a look at the page. Like I said, we spend 6 weeks going deep on the protocol, 6 weeks going over the foundational aspects of how to coach the protocol, like somatic coaching, and then 6 weeks of how that can be integrated into an offer for the work that you want to do out in the world.
And honestly, the design of it is spectacular. The faculty is spectacular. And, one of the things I'm saying is there's a bunch of people here who've done foundations or who have been playing the idea of being into coaching.
We lost Jay. Bummer.
Yeah, I don't know
still
what
love
happened. He
him.
was starting to get all like warbly, and then he disappeared.
He was, yeah. And then Martina became the host. It was like
Martina's the host.
Okay. Jay's back. Jay's back.
Martina, did you know you're the host now? You can take it from here, lady.
What were you saying, Jay?
Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
Just to finish, I was just going to say really quickly that for any of you in this space really working on what is my blue ocean and where are the trends in the I'm going to say in the acceptance and the adoption widespread of psychedelics. Like we in weekly for 2.5 years we get together in this little community, and in this bubble we're preaching to the choir. It's like it's a given. It's how it is. It's no big deal. All the rest of it. It's not where the world is yet, and the openings for the large scale acceptance are going to happen around things like nervous system. They're going to happen in a new way. And if this is intriguing to you, I just want to wholeheartedly say I'd love to see you there and take advantage of the wicked deal. And thank you for doing that, Paul.
Yeah, my sense is with microdosing as well, not just the nervous system, but there's a lot of talk about psychedelic therapy, and we know the efficacy of MDMA and psilocybin and whatnot, but we're still very much in the very early stages. Again, my gut has always been the way that this scales to tens of millions of people is really going to be through microdosing, right? And so if you as a practitioner can offer a particular protocol with microdosing, it's going to be a much easier kind of sell, if you will, to clients than doing a high dose, because a high dose at least for newbies or people who are quite unsure about this, it's a much bigger leap of faith, right? There's a lot more uncertainty involved. Whereas if you can really help guide someone through an initial protocol and it's effective and they can feel the impact and the result of that before they're even getting into high dose work, I think that's critical, right? I think something that's often not talked enough about is how a lot of people with totally dysregulated nervous systems are going in and doing high dose psychedelic work. They're getting blown out and they're actually worse off afterwards than they were before. And it's partly because of a lack of preparation, but it's also partly because the nervous system that they came in with was totally dysregulated. It didn't have enough minerals. It wasn't really at ease. There wasn't a capacity to really surrender, right? All these sorts of things. So I think this is going to also be talked about more and more. Yeah, the price is USD, which I realize for Canadians is
$17.3 million.
Yeah. Yeah, the Canadian peso these days isn't so good, huh?
Martina, for fuck's sakes. Yes. All right. Any other questions, gang, whether it be about the microdosing certification, whether it be about San Pedro or the protocol itself, or the whole idea of nervous system regulation? We got like probably time for like one more great question for Paul, and then we'll do the draw for the Golden Rule, who is giving away $180 of San Pedro. We will do the same here for the Canadians. I got you all set up in the Wheel of Fortune, but got time for one last question if anyone has something burning that they're curious about. Yes, please, Becky.
Becky?
Yeah. Paul, you mentioned earlier just the timing of, LSD and Wachuma being longer, psilocybin being shorter. Any experience you've had or others of like double dosing, maybe every 6 hours or something on psilocybin to try to use that medicine to extend the window?
The challenge or the risk with that is it's a quicker buildup of serotonin sensitivity. I would say, right, that if you're always double dosing, you're going to build up tolerance that much quicker. People do it. Like I know people who will take it first thing in the morning at 7 a.m. and then they'll do it again at 1 p.m. The trade-off is you're going to build up the sensitivity quicker, and you need more substance. You need more medicine, but it certainly can be done, right? And I know, and that's why I said for some people just love their mushrooms. Like Chad, you might be a mushroom guy where you're like, just mushrooms are my medicine. I love it. And so I would encourage you then, if that's the case, to experiment with double dosing and see how that feels for you. And maybe it's a good fit, just be mindful of the tolerance buildup. That's the only thing.
Sure. Thank you. We're gonna try the Wachuma with you and starting in February. So we're looking forward to that.
Oh, cool. Nice. Okay. Fantastic. That'll be fun. So Sarah, the code for the discount, we have an application that you can go through, or just set up a call with Joseph on our team, and then we'll do the discount on the back end. Just make sure that we know that you're part of Integrate, and that's just something custom we do on the back end. Yeah.
Thank you for that, by the way. We appreciate that. I think Les and Chelsea, you'll get last question, and then we'll wrap up and do the draws and get set up for our little meeting after the meeting.
It's kind of a general microdosing question, but sometimes, so you actually mentioned if somebody has a dysregulated nervous system, it might be smarter to start with microdosing. But what happens, and then we talk about when you come out of a macro journey and we want to integrate the experience, sometimes we start microdosing to help that integration. But what if you come out of an experience quite dysregulated? Would microdosing be helpful or harmful, or would it depend on what you're doing?
Depends a lot on the context, depends a lot on the medicine. If a client's coming out dysregulated, the longer you can wait, the better. The more emphasis and focus there is on things that feel nourishing or soothing, the better. So baths, nature, massage, physical touch, soups, broth, right? A lot of collagen, minerals. So a lot of fruits and other things that provide a lot of minerals to the system. These are the things that I would focus on first. And maybe a little bit of breath, right? A little bit of breath work just to help with the catharsis, because oftentimes if someone comes out of an experience quite dysregulated, there's more stuff that they got to process, and that's got to be brought up. So it could be that breath is a helpful thing, because breath can be titrated pretty easily, right? Someone, if they're coached well, or if it's facilitated well, with breath, you can sort of bring them to an edge without pushing them over the edge. Whereas sometimes the risk, even with microdosing right after a high dose experience, if someone is in a dysregulated state, is even a low dose can sometimes reactivate and push them right back over that edge, right? So you have to be sensitive to it and careful with it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a great,
Thank you.
it's a good question, Charles. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely is a brilliant question as well. All right, Paul, while I am pulling up our draw stuff and the Golden Rule website here, anything else, sort of like final words or thoughts in terms of the exploration of this?
Just that, like, tomorrow we have that free webinar. So I shared the link before. If this was a topic of interest and you want to dive deeper with us, just register for that webinar. And even if you can't attend live, I'll just drop the link once more. Even if you can't attend live, you can always get the recording. And then Jade asked me for 3 things. So 1 was know your HRV. 2 was I'd really encourage you to do a practice this week that's specific to nervous system regulation. Yeah. It could be breath work. It could be a sauna cold plunge. It could be, a stop and shake. It could be some sort of qigong, right? Energetic movement. Just pick a practice to explore and look into. And then my 3rd invitation would be to spend some time journaling about your nervous system, right? How can you bring more awareness to the state of your nervous system? How are you? How is it? Where are you? Right? If you go into some of the foundations or fundamentals around the nervous system work, it's like there's fight, flight, or freeze. There's sympathetic and parasympathetic. There's ventral vagal and dorsal vagal. Right? There's a lot that you can go into when it comes to polyvagal theory, when it comes to the autonomic nervous system, when it comes to ways to shift in and out. So I would just spend some time, a little bit of time learning about it and a little bit of time journaling and reflecting on how is your nervous system and what support does it need to help you feel a little bit more, regulated and in your center.
And if you're thinking to yourself, like, what the hell am I going to do for that? Go back in Integrate and go look up any of the 3 of Maren McHugh's presentations. The very last one was very active. She had us moving and shaking and doing a variety of cool things, all directly related to the polyvagal theory and the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Like, the entire thing was exactly what Paul was just suggesting. If you're like, what the hell do I do? Okay, those are the 3.
That's Wendy?
No. This is Maren McHugh. She's our
Maren McHugh.
She's one of our guest faculty and foundations. She's just got her master's or her doctorate. I'm not sure which. Is it
Masters, I think.
Masters. And she is a brilliant IFS breathwork and somatic coach, and runs a thing called Somatic Savvy, and is just one of our favorite human beings on planet Earth. She was my first call in 2026. Maren, I'm getting back into doing all the work. So when can I see you? So she's fantastic. Yeah. So I hope she helps me, because according to my little conversation with ChatGPT tonight, my alarmingly low HRV, I'm trying to get some advice. So, for all that, Paul. This was awesome. Okay. So first things first, and by the way, I got disconnected, so I don't have a bunch of the links that were sent up there, but most of you should be able to find all of the other links if you didn't get kicked out as I did. So I'm just going to put Chelsea and I are doing Somatic Savvy. Yes, I want to participate in the Somatic Savvy as well. I'm doing that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. So first and foremost, we are going to do a draw, and I want to be super clear about this. This is a gift from the Golden Rule. The link is in the chat, so you can go and check out all sorts of things, but it is for this particular item, which I will bring up very quickly, which is the rooted San Pedro. So it's 30 capsules, each of them half a gram, 500 milligrams. It's a value of $180, which is a substantial and meaningful gift from Golden Rule. So I will send a great and grand thank you to Tiffany. And for those of you who don't win, use the link and go buy some shit. I think she was teasing us as like, so should the code, should they get a discount code, or I think Paul and I were teasing about who gets paid if that happens. Just go buy the stuff. We don't care. Who gets paid. So stop that sharing. And now I got it.
Yay, there you go. There's your code, third wave.
Okay,
and this is for
well,
you.
maybe one of us does care. Okay. All right. So we are going to, because that Golden Rule is for our American friends. So we are going to do the draw for the American friends. I think we have absolutely nobody left. I got to be here. All is good. Okay. So we have the Wheel of Names. And can you see that all okay? Or should I make it bigger?
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, here we go. All right. On the count of 3, I'm going to click and we will see who wins. Click. And the winner is Rebecca. All right.
Yay, Rebecca.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
That's fantastic.
Oh my goodness, this is so funny. I was just saying, whoever needs it most is going to win.
Yay.
So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anyway, here we are.
It may well just be the universe responding to your generosity and love. Could be just that simple. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here. And just to be clear, if you can do me a favor, can you just like maybe over in WhatsApp, just send me the address you want to send to and all sorts of things. I'll forward it to Tiffany tonight. She'll get it off in the mail to you right away. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
So stop share. And now we got to find the Canadians.
I didn't know you could do that spin thing.
Yeah. I was working at it while we were chatting. Here we go. That should be the Canadians. Say share. There we go. Cam, Mary Frances, and Mary Frances. You're our Mexican contingent. I put you in with the Canadians because you'll have to figure out, because I can't ship to Mexico and neither can Tiffany. So when you're here next time, if you win, that's how that'll have to go. Okay, on the count of 3, big drum roll. I didn't do a drum roll for the Americans. Drum roll. I can't hear it. Need one. Here we go. And it is Les. Les wins.
Now, why doesn't that surprise me?
Now, the only thing to let you know about stop sharing. The only thing to let you know about the San Pedro from us is that we're still waiting on delivery. I know you and I had this conversation when you were in Calgary, but it's supposed to be here like tomorrow. We'll have it ready for you right away, and we'll ship it out the second that we get our hands on it, and all is well. Okay, so then a couple of quick other last minutes. I know we've gone a little bit long, gang, but wild card, LOL, all good. So a couple of things just in terms of wrapping up. First things first, if you want to be a part of the book club and play in that domain, I will let you know that it starts on January 20th. There are 3 ways to participate. So you can just be a part of the book club. I believe that there are 9 calls. It's all in that link that I had shared with you earlier. And if you can bear with me, I can just show you I can give you that link again. I'll put it here. C, V. And just to be frank with you, I would say that book that I wrote 20 years ago was, to date, some of the best and most significant work that I think I had ever done in my life. And I have a really strong suspicion that revisiting it through the lens of what psychedelics has created an opening for us, and this idea of embodiment will be an update that will be like spectacular. So if you want to come play along, I would love to have you there. The next point on that is that, so we are starting the meetings for the microdosing, what we call the couples microdosing, microdosing plus. we're doing those calls for a series of 8 weeks. And most of the time when we do microdosing calls, it's just 6 weeks, because we know that some people have to move in and move out in terms of timing. Some people are managing macrodosing schedules around it, so they only actually get 4 weeks in. Some people are still waiting for San Pedro to be delivered to them before they can start. So just know that tonight, and I'll actually just share the screen here so you can all see it in terms of how that works. Tonight, there we are at the microdosing support calls. Let me just get the shared screen up here so you can all see it. So tonight is the first, go back here, there we go. Tonight is the first gathering where we're going to make sure that you've got all of the supplies. You may have a unique start date. You might not be starting exactly like tomorrow or any of those sorts of things. So we can get your plan so that we can support with you all the way through. And then these are all of the dates in which we are going to be meeting. Now, because Integrate is no longer every single Wednesday, do note that there are going to be meetings that are after Integrate, and then there are going to be meetings that are just 1 o'clock in the afternoon, where we're going to check in, we're going to do our quick little update. This is what's going on. This is how it's working. This is what we need to tweak and adjust. And these are all of the dates for that process. So if you want to join us for the microdosing support calls, and by the way, this is not just for couples. Our primary invitation is couples, but we also have individuals who are going to be participating along, and they're going to do what we call the clarity and connection protocol at the same time. It's fundamentally the same process. They just don't have a person near and dear and in their bedroom that's going to reflect back to them. So if you want to participate with that, once we end this call, just jump back on or stay on the line. I'm going to probably go get a quick cup of tea and come right back. And then we will get the foundation laid and make sure everything is organized in the manner that you need it to be organized. And then there is something else.
Notice some dates on there, Jay, of a little bit of potential conflict, but let's just leave that up for now. If we need to move one of them, we can do that.
Yes, and I should be perfectly clear about it, in terms of the check-ins and those sorts of things, they may not always be me. In terms of, we're bringing some people on to serve and support and to do some more community engagement and support processes, but those dates we're going to stick with, but they may not always be me. Thank you for reminding me of that process.
Because there's a few travel days there, and then there's a foundations date there, so that's good to know. All right.
Yep. And then the rooted, this one here. And then the only other thing, and that's looking a little bit weird in there for some strange reason, is on March 12th to 14th, we are doing the Psychedelic Coach Accelerator. That's something to do with my button. And if any of you are interested in coming and sort of bridging this gap and getting more context and clarity around what it might look to integrate, be that microdosing. If you're doing Paul's certification program, this would be a great way to utilize that program and bring it into an offer into the world. That's a 3-day event. It's $297 if you buy the VIP. I think it's only $97 if you just want to come attend live. But I highly encourage anyone in the process of wondering, am I going to do this? Am I going to bring this to the world? Am I going to share it with my family? This particular weekend is spectacular. And on that note, the last thing I have to say is, let us please express some gratitude, follow up with Paul. If there's anything interesting in that whole domain, just check it out. They do really exceptional work. And I was just going to ask Corey if I missed anything, but I'm guessing that I did not. So on that note, gang, if you are hanging around for the setup and the planning structure and making sure we get all the mechanics and the details for the Couples Connection Plus, be back here in like 2 minutes. It's not going to be long. I think everybody I see here has some level of experience with it, so we don't need to do a whole bunch, but we'll just make sure that we're all on the same page. I know what your start dates are so we can support you in the most meaningful manner. All good? All right, my friends. Marvelous. Sleep tight. Have a marvelous night. It was great to see you. And you remember your 3 things: HRV, resting heart rate, do something to activate your nervous system. I think the 3rd thing was sign up for his certification. I don't remember what the 3rd thing was. It fell out of my head. All right.